Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us at ATSSA's Midyear Digital meeting. We will be recording this session. We appreciate everybody's patience as we have changed the platform due to the Zoom worldwide outage this morning. I'm now going to pass this over to Stacy.
Thanks, Pamela. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to ATSSA's first Midyear Digital event. And as I'm the new president and CEO with ATSSA, I don't like to do anything the typical way, so we figured why not have a Zoom outage when we started today. And all the prep work that we've done to deliver this to you, our team has been amazing at turning on a dime in the last 90 minutes to get this out. So we're so pleased to have you join us for this special opening session. We've got some great people that we want you to meet and to hear from, both from Minnesota Department of Transportation, as well as 3 innovative industry speakers. We also hope that while you're here that you're going to take advantage of opportunities to network and join the various committee meetings throughout our digital platform. As we begin, I also want to extend my appreciation for our event sponsors. As you all know, event sponsors are the key to why things come together, how we can make them so affordable. So we want to thank our gold sponsors, Atcor Allied, Tube and Conduit, Crisp Company, and Street Smart. And also we have a silver sponsor that we want to thank, Horizon Signal. All of these folks have put forth extra funds, extra efforts to make sure this was as easy and simple as it could be for everyone to participate. So big thank you to them. Also, a huge thank you goes out to our foundation sponsors who gave in support of important programs that support the families of roadway workers who have been killed or permanently disabled on the job. We appreciate the many who volunteered as matching sponsors in the individual chapters and companies that gave to the maximum benefit of the matching campaign. I just want to take a second here and really say this has been a really, really cool program for us this year. Since we couldn't go and we couldn't have this fundraiser, for you to consider donating, and if you haven't yet, it's not too late, to contribute what you would have spent on a cab or Uber fare. And these matching sponsors for the foundation have also been able to take that and almost 10 times your whatever you donate. So if you haven't yet, I'd really encourage you to go to the ATSSA Foundation website and donate there. Donate no matter how small the amount, large the amount, because we're matching it, it turns into 10 times that amount from our foundation sponsor. So please help us meet those fundraising goals. Now, without further ado, let me introduce Nancy Daubenberger, Minnesota DOT's Deputy Chief Commissioner and Chief Engineer. Nancy's worked for Minnesota DOT for 20 years in engineering and management positions. She was appointed Deputy Commissioner and Chief Engineer in December of 2019. Prior to her current role, she served as the Assistant Commissioner for Engineering Services, State Bridge Engineer, and previously served as the Manager of the Planning Section of the Bridge Office. She has also worked in the Metro District in the Traffic Section and has held other positions in the bridge and road design areas. Although we were supposed to be meeting in Minnesota, we couldn't. We're so pleased that Nancy's still able to give us some time and share some insights with us. So thank you very much, Nancy, and welcome to ATSSA's first digital program.
Good morning, and thank you, Stacy. And I'd like to join Stacy in welcoming everyone and thanking the sponsors and the foundation sponsors especially, but for making time for this. And I'd like to welcome you virtually to Minnesota. Really regret that we can't host you in person this year. And in fact, summertime is just a beautiful time to be in Minnesota with all the lakes and the land of over 10,000 lakes, and Minneapolis is the city of lakes. And but we'll look forward to hosting at some point in the future and meeting you all in person. So just a few updates from Minnesota. Since late March, like many of folks out there, we've been teleworking in terms of those in MnDOT who can telework for their jobs have been teleworking since late March. And it's probably a little over half the agency though who's been reporting to their regular job sites, so construction, maintenance, facilities maintenance, things like that. But the rest of us have been teleworking, and just heard from our governor's office a little over a week ago that we should probably assume we're going to be teleworking until the end of the calendar year. So we went through some efforts to take a look at protocols we need to have in place to for those who've been working in their regular job duties in buildings that they've been reporting to during COVID, but also to get them ready for those coming back to work. And in the end, it was only a few additional folks we ended up bringing back after taking a look at where we might have some gaps in service that are better filled if they can be done in person or from the facility that they would normally come to. But otherwise, we've been teleworking and making it work, and look forward to the day we can bring folks back and be around our teammates. So, but with that, just a few other updates I'll share with folks today. Traffic counts in Minnesota. So at this time, we're still down about 10% statewide. That's the statewide average. It's lower than that in the metropolitan area of Minnesota, but then higher, closer to regular percentage or to regular traffic count, excuse me, compared to the same day in 2019. So in comparison, we've been on average down about 10%. And it'll be interesting to see how that might change though once school starts up again, which is coming very soon for some folks. And then with the reduced revenues that have happened because of the reduced traffic volumes, we've been looking at budget reductions and making some cuts, but we haven't had to lay off people or do any furloughs. Just looking at reduced spending at this point, we've been able to let projects on time in our fiscal year 2020, which ended at the end of June, and now we're in our fiscal year 2021, our state fiscal year. And still planning to let projects on time, but we're currently estimating about a $93 million peak deficit that'll occur in our fiscal year 22. And that's about 5% of our annual revenues. This deficit's due to a little over 200 million, 232 million reduction in fund revenues in our current biennium, so fiscal 20 and fiscal 21. We look like we'll probably be down about 232 million, which is about an 8% reduction over the entire biennium. And this impact was somewhat mitigated by a strong fund balance reserve we've had. So that's by policy. So that's really helped us out. Also, we've identified about 130 million in spending reductions, mostly on the operational side, but everything's when it comes to looking at where we can reduce. Some things that we've done are just have hiring restrictions in place, so trying to shrink our headcount somewhat. Also, we've just recently offered a salary savings leave to our employees. So that's to allow them to reduce their hours, stay at full-time benefits, but have their salary cut appropriately with the reduced hours, not only to help us with our budget reductions that we need to achieve, but also at a time in which there's a lot of our employees who have children at home and are doing some blend of distance learning or all distance learning and additional daycare or their lack thereof demands on parents, but just trying to offer our staff some flexibility too. And with that, we're trying to assess what the impacts are going to be to delivering all of our services. But at this point, we're aiming to certainly keep our priority services at the level that we have been. A lack of a bonding bill in our state legislature, which we were really hopeful would come through this year, has impacted how we're looking at the program. There's still a chance that a bonding bill could be passed in a special session. It's not looking as likely right now. But because of that, we're looking at a challenge again with our budget, and in our state road construction program, we might need to delay some projects because of that, but we haven't haven't officially delayed any projects just yet. So again, we're just preparing for a wide range of possibilities in case we do get a state or federal infusion of dollars. We'll be ready to deliver additional projects. But those are the main updates. But one other thing I did want to mention, though, too, while I have the attention of this group, is with the tragic death of George Floyd at the hands of Minneapolis police officers at the end of May, and the civil unrest that occurred following that, not only in Minneapolis or in Minnesota, but of course around the country. State DOTs have been asked recently in discussions I've been in and other panels and that sort of thing, you know, what is your DOT doing to address equity? So I thought I'd take just a minute to mention a few things here today. So at MnDOT, we do have a separate Office of Civil Rights, as well as an Office of Equity and Diversity, and an Office of Tribal Affairs. And we've elevated the directors of those offices to our senior leadership team to have them at the table while we're making decisions. We've also developed what we call an equity lens. It's a document that asks a series of questions to try to get at, are we taking into account equity as we put in place our policies, practices, and procedures? And so those are some things we are doing internally, but we're also making investments in transportation equity research and the development of our long-range plans to be more inclusive of communities across the state and increase participation of underrepresented groups in transportation planning as well, and ensuring we're not missing anyone. Also, as I'm sure a lot of folks are realizing, transportation public engagement in this virtual space that we're in right now has been both an opportunity, right, created by online convenience, but also an obstacle for people who don't have access or are limited technology users. Therefore, we're working to identify and implement solutions that allow us to engage a greater audience of stakeholders using various technology. One other thing we've had going for a little while now is our DBE, Disadvantaged Business Enterprise and Workforce Collaborative Stakeholder Group. And we've had that in place now, but even more in recent years have had a subgroup called the Results and Accountability Group. And they report out monthly on how we're doing with our small business and external workforce on-the-job training program results. We're also addressing disparities in business contracting and opportunities using different strategies like applying existing state statute authority to expand contracting opportunities for small businesses, and we're right-sizing contracts for success. We're training businesses on new types of work that they could do from MnDOT. We're providing small business development workshops and trainings focused on technical concepts like bidding and estimating and in their own operations, budgeting, payroll, that sort of thing. But just kind of a 101 on what's necessary to work for the state of Minnesota on a contract basis. So those are just a few things I would mention, but with that, I do want to say, and I realize I'm at time here, but thank you all for letting me give you some MnDOT updates. And I wanted to just wish you all a great conference this week, even though it is in the virtual space. And you're going to hear from some of MnDOT's technical experts, some of our crackerjack expertise that we have on staff on the sign committee, pavement marking committee, safety and public awareness committee, temporary traffic control, traffic signs committee. So thanks MnDOT staff for your participation in those committees. And again, everyone enjoy the conference. Thanks.
Nancy, thank you. We appreciate the update. And even though we couldn't be in Minnesota as we all wish that we could, it's good to hear what's going on and a lot of the good things happening there. So we appreciate you giving us some time and almost making us feel like we were there. And I guess just short of some hot dish and a few other things, we're missing Minnesota. So as we move along, it's now my pleasure to introduce our panelists for today's feature presentation. Nate Smith is ATSSA's Vice President of Government Affairs, and he's going to facilitate a discussion with panel members and experts offering short and long-term forecasts relevant to roadway safety industry. Our panel today includes Ken Simonson, the Chief Economist with the Associated General Contractors of America, Jeff Davis, Senior Fellow and Editor for the Eno Center for Transportation, and Hillary Kane, the Vice President of Technology with Alliance for Automotive Innovation. With all of that, a lot more qualified people than me in the room, so I'm going to turn it over to Nate to take it away.
Thanks, Stacy. I appreciate it. You know, that was a good segue into talking about the reduced outlook for Minnesota DOT into our conversation today. Our conversation today is going to be focused on the future, and the future from a perspective of 6 months from now, the future from a perspective of 60 months from now, and the future from a perspective of 6 years plus from now. And that is going to be focused on both money, funding, the economic market, and technology. And so, I think first I'll turn it over to Ken to kind of give us a little bit of a lay of the land as to what the transportation construction economic market looks like right now. We're in a wild year, and unfortunately, I think everybody's crystal ball is a little murkier than they normally would be for what we do. But Ken, kind of give us your best outlook as to where we are today, kind of how we got here, and then what the near future looks like.
Sure. As many of you know, Associated General Contractors of America is the leading national construction trade association. We have over 27,000 member companies that belong through 88 chapters that span the country from Alaska to South Florida and Puerto Rico, and from Maine to San Diego and Hawaii. And we've been able to tap that network. The contractors account for, general contractors, for about 6,500, and the rest are divided between subcontractors and suppliers of equipment, goods, and services, including, I hope, many ATSSA members. We've done a series of surveys, a total of 8 of them, from mid-March through mid-June. And right now we're in the midst of our annual workforce survey that includes many of the questions from those coronavirus surveys we did in the spring. What we found in the spring was that a fairly steady half of firms said that they were running into delays or disruptions to their projects. The percentage eventually dropped off, but only for one reason. PPE, personal protective equipment, which had been very hard for anybody to get hold of at the beginning in March. By the June survey, only 10% of firms said they were having trouble getting PPE. However, a steady 1/4 of firms throughout that 3-month period were still having trouble getting deliveries, and 1/4 said that they were having trouble getting workers on site. In addition, some government employees weren't available either for on-site inspections, contract approvals, permits, and so forth. So there's still many challenges for contractors. Of course, I think the biggest worry for highway contractors is that drop in revenues that Nancy mentioned. And AGC has been working in concert with many other transportation stakeholders to try to convince Congress to go ahead and backfill that revenue loss that the AASHTO had estimated at $37 billion just through the current fiscal year ending in June of 2021 for most states, but also for a broader expansion of infrastructure funding, including, of course, renewal and increased funding for the FAST Act that expires next month. In terms of worker availability, we found quite a mixed picture. Some contractors saying that all of the furloughed workers that they've recalled have come back, but a significant percentage said that some workers refused to return, either because of their own coronavirus fears from the job site, or because of problems at home, family responsibility to take care of someone who may have been infected, or because childcare was no longer available. So I do think that contractors are going to continue to face significant challenges, both in terms of the number of projects that are going to be awarded and the availability of workers, materials, and perhaps still PPE.
Great, thanks, Ken. I appreciate that. And focusing over to Jeff to talk a little bit about money. That's when we do a highway bill reauthorization, I often will tell our members that the easy part is the policy. By and large, it's how do you pay for this massive piece of legislation? And Ken touched on the fact that the FAST Act expires here in about 5 weeks or so. There's been some movement in Congress, both in the Senate and in the House, to try and do a reauthorization. But at the end of the day, there are billions and billions and billions of dollars that need to be found in order to do a surface transportation program. So give us a lay of the land of what the Highway Trust Fund looks like right now, and what does that look like in the weeks and months ahead?
Well, to start with, from the moment that you or I stop driving, it takes 3 to 6 weeks for the economic effects of that to work their way back upstream to be felt in the tax receipts of the Federal Highway Trust Fund, because the gas station stops ordering from the wholesaler doesn't take as much from the terminal stops taking out of the pipeline, and then eventually the refiner slows down, and these fuels the federal taxes are paid on an estimated basis twice a month at the refinery or terminal level, depending on common ownership. And so from the time that the lockdowns really started in late March, the Highway Trust Fund didn't really feel the financial effects of that until May, and they took a beating. And they started to come back in June. But last month in July, they were only down about 5%. Actually, they were up a little bit from the year before. And year to date, October 1st of last year through July 31st in the fiscal year, Highway Trust Fund tax receipts are only down 12%. And this kind of tracks with we have weekly announcements from the Energy Department on how much gasoline is being produced each week at the refinery and blender level. And that dropped about 40% in April. And it's gradually worked its way back up for the last 2 weeks. Gasoline was only down about 7% production. And again, the refiners are trying to get ahead of the market by a couple of weeks. But that kind of tracks with what the Minnesota Assistant Secretary said about VMT being down about 10% in Minnesota. I believe the June 30th, we don't have good federal numbers since June 30th, but those were down about 12 or 13% from last year, and they're going to stabilize at about that level. So it looks like user tax revenues for motor fuels are going to stabilize at a new normal of 5 to 10% down below last year, unless we have another major series of lockdowns that look like what we had back in April, May. As a result of that, the Highway Trust Fund, it looks like if the next 3 months go like that, down about 10 to 12% from last year, and spending goes about the way it's been going, it looks like we'll get through the end of the fiscal year on September 30th with about $10–11 billion in the highway account and $4 billion in the transit account of the trust fund. The key is not getting through September 30th; it's getting through November 30th, because once you get into December, the cold weather states like Minnesota start closing down a lot of their in-the-field construction. So every year, this is cyclical. Spending in that trust fund peaks because projects are going on out in the field in August, September. By December, January, February, March, taxes usually exceed monthly spending, and they can catch back up. So if you can get through November 30th, you can get to April. And it looks like they'll be able to do that with a couple of $1 billion left over at current spending levels. And then after that, we get into the great deluge that we've anticipated for some time, where that the $70 billion bailout from the FAST Act will have run out by next March or April, and an average of $15 to $20 billion over the next decade will be needed just to reconcile current spending levels with estimated receipts from current tax rates. And like $195 billion over 10 years at the pre-coronavirus baseline, and no one has any good idea of how to find that money other than just write another blank check from the Treasury Department.
And that's assuming that $20 billion number is assuming that we just do what we currently do today, right? No new programs, no additional spending, et cetera.
Right. All those baselines they talk about are last year's enacted spending plus an annual inflation bump and the cash flow effects from that. So yeah, at FY20 plus inflation, you're going to be running $15 to $20 billion annual deficits from the trust fund every year, and have to find that money somewhere.
Gotcha. So you're talking about new programs and new investments. Hillary, technology is obviously item du jour right now in terms of a transportation policy and what that looks like going forward. With connected and automated vehicles, our industry is really right in the center of all of that. You know, as the manufacturers and installers of traffic signs and signals and guardrail and pavement markings, work zone safety devices, we are the thing that the car is talking to in order to be able to drive without a driver today and in the future. So what is the current status of CAV policy, and specifically maybe talking a little bit about the safety spectrum, 5.9 gigahertz?
Yeah, thanks so much. And just for those who maybe aren't familiar with the Alliance for Automotive Innovation, I thought I would just mention that we are a new organization that was formed just in January of this year, and we represent a merger between two previous trade associations that represented the auto industry in the United States. The Alliance of Automobile Manufacturers and the Association of Global Automakers came together under one roof to create this new association. So we represent the automakers that comprise 99% of the US auto market, and also a number of automotive suppliers and technology companies that make up sort of this new innovation ecosystem that we're seeing in the auto space. So I think it's fair to say that there is a lot of excitement about and an eagerness about both connected and automated vehicle technology and its opportunities around safety and efficiency, and really to transform our transportation system. On the connected side, you know, you have seen some major announcements from automakers. General Motors has already started deploying the technology, V2X technology in its vehicles. Ford has announced its plans to move forward in the next couple of years with the technology in its vehicles. A number of our supplier members are working very closely with state DOTs around the country to outfit infrastructure that can communicate with cars. On the automated side, you know, you've seen a lot of automakers increasing penetration of active safety features, which are the building blocks of automation. You're seeing a number of automakers move forward in the US market with what's known as a level 2 system, which is a partially automated system. And you're seeing a tremendous amount of research and development and testing around highly automated vehicles, sort of self-driving vehicles, if you will. If I'll just end on one critical point, you know, all of this is happening, you know, against the backdrop of a tremendous amount of regulatory uncertainty. So to your point about the safety spectrum, I think folks may be aware that the Federal Communications Commission is currently has an open proceeding where they are considering reallocating the spectrum that has been set aside for V2X technology away from V2X technology and towards Wi-Fi, which would, I think it's safe to say, undercut, if not obliterate, sort of this connected future that at least our members are working towards. And the second thing that we're, you know, the regulatory uncertainty that we're operating under is with respect to a federal framework for automated vehicles. We do not have one of those in the United States right now. And so as you see this research and development and testing underway, what you have to recognize is that's happening, you know, as we sit here today without a clear path to deployment of that technology at scale in the United States, which creates quite a bit of uncertainty and complication for our members working on that technology.
Great. So Jeff, you know, as we start talking about future needed investments, say in technology, or even just kind of building stuff better than we do today, that's going to cost more money. What is that future for the Highway Trust Fund? I mean, cars seem that they're getting better and better fuel economy. Trucks are becoming lighter and more efficient. Is the gas and diesel user fee sustainable in the decade ahead, or, you know, is something like a vehicle miles traveled user fee a path forward for the trust fund?
Next 5 to 10 years, there's still no substitute for it. If you supplement it with fees on electric vehicles that are currently using federal aid highways and paying zero into the Highway Trust Fund. Beyond that, the problem is you can still going to a VMT fee. The problem is not principled, and it's not really technology anymore. It's IRS administration, because right now the motor fuel taxes are incredibly easy for the IRS to collect. Like I said, they're paid at the refinery or the terminal rack. Only about 1,300 total points of potential collection, but a lot of common ownership there. So far, fewer actually tax-paying entities, And that gets you $35, $36 billion a year. It's incredibly easy for the IRS to monitor 1,300 points of collection and a lot fewer taxpayers filing quarterly returns to get $35 billion a year. Once you go from a federal tax on fuel to a federal tax on vehicles or drivers, you're going from 1,300 points of collection to north of 200 million points of collection. And the thing is, the dirty little secret of the IRS is that there is, when they're collecting personal income taxes, there's some secret dollar amount below which they don't go chasing fraud because it's not worth their time. They won't say what it is, but I mean, the average American drives 13,500 miles a year. At the current tax rate, at 20 miles a gallon, they're paying about $125 in gasoline taxes. At 30 miles a gallon, it's $82 a year. Even if you double or triple the taxes, the amount that the average person would pay in a VMT fee replacing that is probably going to be below the amount that the IRS is capable of chasing down with, at 200 million points of collection. So it's not the technology. It's the fact that so many people out there, my grandparents didn't file tax returns for the last 10 years of their life because they had no income. So a lot of people like that, or people who are making not enough money to file income taxes. Is the IRS going to put a box in their car and chase them down for their $60 to $150 a year VMT fee? That is the issue more than technology or more than principle. And it's one that hasn't really been addressed yet by proponents of switching over to a VMT fee, even though from an economic point of view, a VMT is clearly the fairest way to allocate the cost of road use and scalable and all these other things. But it's administratively, it's going to be a lot bigger leap to get there than people are thinking.
So Congress has been taking a look at the Highway Trust Fund now. I mean, since Safety Lou 2005, if not earlier. Blue ribbon commissions here and task forces there. The Senate COVID relief package, that's not law yet, but is kicking around on the Senate side, has a provision that would have Congress look again at all trust funds, including the Highway Trust Fund. Is that a step forward, or is that sort of just another blue ribbon commission so they don't have to increase taxes right now?
It's another blue ribbon commission, and this one would have some kind of fast track treatment in the Senate that would prevent its recommendations from being filibustered. But still, that's a law. That assumes that the Blue Ribbon Commission can come to an agreement, and the big super committee we had on deficit reduction didn't. And again, that's a long ways away. They would form study commissions for Social Security Trust Fund and Medicare and disability and unemployment and several. And Highway Trust Fund is also over the dollar amount that they would have to study. But that's another way of putting the kicking things down the road a little bit. We would have to do some kind of initial bailout of the Highway Trust Fund before that study committee would even report, even if the Senate bill were enacted tomorrow. And you really can't write a multi-year authorization without trying to figure that issue out of how to pay for it first, which is why I just worry that we're going to keep defaulting to having the general fund just write a check to the Highway Trust Fund for whatever you need to get through the next year or two, because we've already written $2 or $3 trillion in deficit financing tax this year already. What's another, $50 billion to get the trust fund a couple more years of solvency? And it's once they started doing that in 2008, the fact of the matter are it's so easy budgetarily just to keep bailing out rather than suck it up and raise real revenues from somewhere that it becomes kind of addictive, unfortunately.
So thinking forward, Ken, I'm going to come over to you. We're telling our members, likely that there will be an extension of the FAST Act. I think everyone has sort of come around to that conclusion at this point that in the next 5 weeks we are unlikely to get a reauthorization. So we will more than likely see an extension of the current transportation bill, the FAST Act, into sometime next year, likely. What does that do to the economic market in general for the construction industry when we have extensions versus a sort of a long-term transportation bill?
Well, in general, uncertainty is the enemy of investment, and there's no longer term investment than construction projects, highway and other public works that are meant to last several decades for is probably the extreme of that. So I think this causes problems for everybody involved with highway construction, the DOTs, certainly the contractors, and their decisions about whether to invest in more equipment and training and hiring employees and so forth. And so that feeds back to the manufacturers and suppliers as well. And I think something Nancy said is certainly significant in terms of the recent evolution of the economy, that the MnDOT is looking to keep people at home much longer than they had initially expected. Thursday, I was on a call with several dozen trade association economists, and almost without exception, they were saying their offices were going to be closed until the end of the year. All of the conventions and meetings, conferences they had planned through the end of this year were going virtual, and some well into next year. So, and of course, we've seen school systems and universities back off of reopening plans, some immediately after opening, some days before they were going to. All of this affects traffic counts and means that while the traffic has cut back better than many states had expected, and therefore fuel tax receipts have also come back on the gas side especially, I think that that is just a false spring, that we're about to see a further drop off, and that's going to add to that uncertainty as to how will the DOTs react in terms of being able to put forth projects. Earlier this year, we did see a lot of projects moving ahead. Some DOTs, Florida and Indiana, a couple examples that I saw, awarded more projects in the hopes that the stimulus effect, as well as the being able to make use of the much lighter traffic on the roads, would be a positive for their state's economies and for their construction plans. But I think we'll see very few of those, and more announcements of bid lettings being postponed, projects scaled back, and so forth.
Great. So this, although the funding aspect is not super optimistic right now, the optimistic side that I see is the technology side. This is an incredibly exciting time in the transportation industry. I mean, think about even 15 years ago, the conversations we were having were wildly different than they are today. So Hillary, what does the next 5 to 10 years look like when we start thinking about technology as it relates to transportation and mobility?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I really do. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. I do think we really are on the cusp of an incredible transformation in our transportation sector. And I think let's be optimists for a second, and let's assume that some of this regulatory uncertainty that has been plaguing this technology in the last couple of years rights itself. So let's assume that the FCC makes the right decision and preserves all the spectrum that's currently allocated for VDEX technology. And let's assume that we get a federal framework in place that would allow for deployment of highly automated vehicles at scale. I think you're going to see over the next 5 to 10 years an enormous uptick in the number of deployments that you're seeing. I think you'll see more and more infrastructure being built out with connectivity. I think you'll see more and more automakers move forward with deploying the technology in their vehicles. I suspect that you will see many more, I would call these significant pilot programs with highly automated vehicles being deployed and allowing for consumers and others to get exposure to them and take rides in them and that sort of thing. All of that, I think, really the next 5 to 10 years is really the critical piece where you'll see much of this sort of come to fruition.
Excellent. So if our members want to get involved in on the technology side and trying to help preserve the safety spectrum and then really engage on some of the issues that auto innovators are working on, is there a way for them to do that?
Yeah, I mean, and I think I know our associations are united in wanting to make sure that the spectrum is preserved for VDEX technology. And we are at a critical point. We're probably looking at a decision being made in the next couple of months on this point. And so I cannot stress enough how important it is for folks to be weighing in with the Federal Communications Commission and the U.S. Department of Transportation about the importance of maintaining the spectrum, making it very clear that a decision to reallocate the spectrum away from transportation safety would just be devastating to the future of auto safety. So as much as and any help that we can provide to you or to any of your members in connecting with the FCC or DOT, please let us know. But it's sort of now or never. We are at that phase of this.
Jeff, you have a couple of reauthorizations under your belt. I don't know exactly how many, but I'm going to guess what, like 5? 4?
I remember the iced tea in 1991, so
okay.
I'm not track of how many are between now and then.
Excellent. So here we are looking at 5 weeks until the expiration of the FAST Act. Layered on top of that is an election season that is maybe more contentious than usual. The good point is that both political parties want to do infrastructure policy, at least according to official statements. How likely will we see a reauthorization, do you think, in the first 6 to 9 months of next year? Or do you think this becomes a FAST Act reauthorization where we have 3 years of extensions trying to get, or excuse me, a safety loop where we have 3 years of extensions trying to get across the finish line?
It depends a bit on how the elections turn out. If Democrats get the trifecta, even with by one vote margin in the Senate, then the first 6 months of next year are all going to be about one big budget reconciliation tax spending package, and they'd probably fix the Highway Trust Fund in that and get it and do the Highway Trust Fund revenue side, and then you would have the authorizing committee would come along and write the bill, spending the money over the long term throughout the course of next year. If you have more divided government indecision, you're still going to have some kind of major taxing, because the federal debt ceiling, we forgot about it. It got reset in 2019 with that last budget deal. That resets again next August 1st. So that will be the driver. If you don't have if you don't have one party government that'll push their own plan through, then you're going to have another one of these excruciating debt limit crises next August, September, when the special measures run out, and they're going to have to do something huge, massive fiscal policy to find the votes to get the debt limit increase. Because in the past, things like TARP, the Obama stimulus in 2009, Fannie Freddie bailout, things like that, and bipartisan budget deals have been what they've done in Congress to find the votes to get people covered to vote for debt limit increases. So you'll either have a big Democratic fiscal that sets the entire fiscal policy of the first term in the first 6 months of next year. If Dems have the trifecta, that'll also reset debt limit, or else you're going to have a miserable amount of pushing back and forth until they are pushed into some kind of fiscal deal in August, September.
So buckle up, I guess, is and that's the point too for our members. Kind of going back to what Ken was talking about certainty, is that obviously is one of the biggest drivers to a healthy construction market, is that sense of certainty. And so as our members begin to plan for their 2021 budgets and company forecasts, it's seemingly like there's going to be some level of uncertainty, at least for several months into next year, and they should begin planning for that. Would you agree with that, Ken?
Sure, and let me add yet one more element of uncertainty. We've seen a lot of speculation about where people are going to live. We've had people who can afford to move to second homes, some people buying homes in outer suburbs or non-metropolitan areas, but there's still a lot of question as to what's ultimately going to happen. How many people are going to be coming back to offices? And if the answer is far fewer, that may mean a lot less traffic on roads and less willingness to fund highways. On the other hand, if these people wind up moving to farther out locations, but their offices don't move and they're expected to come to the offices, then you have more road traffic than we've had in the last few years. So there are just multiple levels of uncertainty about what the road usage will be and which roads people are going to be taking. Add to that the unwillingness of people or inability to use transit lately. Will transit come back to its previous levels? If not, does that imply even more road congestion within the areas now served by transit?
Courtney, I understand we have a question in the chat box.
We do. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. So I think this is for all the panelists. Do you think that public transportation will be one of the first to automate?
If you look at the bill that the House passed, there were protections that were put in there by the transit unions that were designed to protect bus driver jobs against automation. Here in the DC area, the trains were actually originally, when they were designed in the 70s, were supposed to be automated. And at some point, the national union succeeded in having people put in there to run them that still are. So that's going to be kind of, even though the potential for job savings through automation is there, the transit unions are particularly powerful, and they're going to be on the watch out for potential job losses due to automation. They're very focused on that.
Yeah, and if I could jump in, I fully agree with that. I think the workforce implications in the transit space are arguably insurmountable, at least in the short term. I do think that the question as well is the correct question, because you're right that a fixed route public transit sort of loop is exactly the sort of thing that would be arguably easier to automate than other personally owned vehicles that are going sort of anywhere at any time not on a fixed route. So you're right that the technological capabilities, lend themselves to arguably automating public transit earlier, but there are unique workforce implications, sure, that need to get worked through.
Nothing to add.
Great, thanks. So it sounds like in order to prepare for the next 12 months to start, our members need to engage. I mean, that's the end. I mean, if that's the takeaway, I guess. Whether it's engaging on trying to save the safety spectrum and working with the auto innovators, or whether it's continuing to engage with the ATC and the Transportation Construction Coalition on trying to backfill AASHTO and the state DOTs, and trying to get a highway trust fund solution and reauthorization bill done. Engagement is the name of the game right now. Is that correct?
Yes, definitely.
Great. Well, thank you all for joining us today. Our members, especially the ones that are on this webinar right now, are the most engaged part of our association, and I can guarantee that they will continue to be so, and we'll be asking them to reach out to their legislators to have these conversations about trying to get something done over this fall, if at all possible, and then looking forward to the future of technological advances in the transportation spectrum. So with that, Stacy, I'll hand it back over to you.
Hey, Nate, thank you. I want to just say a huge thanks to Ken, Hillary, Jeff, and especially to you, Nate, for putting this together. And I think it's great insight into our immediate future as well as our long-term future. And the forecasts are certainly going to help inform our entire industry, our membership, and us. So thank you. And what I like most, I believe, is Nate's summary about engagement. And engagement is the key. Getting involved is the key. That's what this whole meeting is about, actually. The work that's going to get done is crucial to ATSSA's mission to advance roadway safety. Funding is a big part of that. We appreciate everyone who's going to be participating over the next few days in all of these committees and everything that you do for Midyear Digital and advancing each of your specific areas. We've had almost 200 people involved during this particular segment, and that's great engagement, especially for a first-year digital meeting for us. We appreciate that. There are some other opportunities to engage. You can see the slide. There's virtual coffee and social hours today. tomorrow, as we talk about engagement, Nate is going to be getting a PAC reception together as well. And I really want to emphasize this, that the work that Nate does is inherent on creating relationships in Washington, D.C., and a lot of those relationships are developed at fundraisers, and those fundraisers are supported through this PAC. So whether your support of that is at a small nature or at a larger nature, I really encourage you to look at how you can get involved in that. And that's going to lead to, in just a couple weeks, ATSSA is going to have our very first virtual legislative briefing and fly-in, September the 15th and 16th. And I'd encourage any of you who've ever been curious, please don't let this intimidate you if coming to Washington, D.C. would do that. Nate and his team are setting up not just a big briefing in an environment like this to hear from some key legislators, but he's also setting up screen-to-screen in a lot of the districts, face-to-face opportunity with key legislative officials. So we really hope that you get involved and you sign up. There is no cost to be involved in that. It's just a little bit of time, and it's an opportunity to talk to your legislators about the jobs that you generate and the safety that you're involved in their districts and the lives that you save and the lives that you help fund for jobs. So thank you very much to everyone. Typically at this point, I would turn this over and have our chairman of the board, Greg Driskell, say a few words. Thanks to Zoom and our technology challenges, we do have a message from Greg, but we can't seem to get it up and going here. So we're going to send that out to everyone and send you a link and take advantage of what we do have so that you can hear, because it is important that you hear also not just from us as staff people, but from him as a peer leader as well. And please take a few minutes when that comes in your inbox and take a look at that. He's got some pretty unique perspective and a great little treat in there for everybody as well. So with that said, have a great week this year at Midyear Digital. I'll be checking in with each of the committees and seeing everyone. I really had hoped to be doing this meeting in person since I'm new here. I am a new guy at ATSSA. If you ever need to get in touch with me, you want to send me some feedback even on this session, I've set up an email so that you can get direct to me. It's newguy@atssa.com. It'll last for years because this, as you can tell from just our panel today, people are in this industry for a long time. Since I'm a newcomer, I will be a new guy for the next 5 years. So newguy@atssa.com, please connect with us. Let us know what you think. Have a great week, and thank you again for your support of ATSSA.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. And thanks to all that are participating in this unprecedented digital event. Unprecedented. Defined as never done or never known before, but I define it as year 2020, right? This word is one that comes up in nearly every conversation these days, unprecedented. Another word is unpredicted. This has been an unpredicted and unpredictable year, while some of our members are busier than ever, yet some are unsure as to where or when their next project or even job is going to come from. Not unlike you, we as an association have had to repeatedly pivot and adjust to this crazy environment. From operations and budgets to events like this, everything has been impacted. Fortunately, we've had past leaders that had the foresight to set up measures to buffer the potential effects of times like this. And current leaders that are deeply dedicated to the cause of this organization and equipped with the experience, the knowledge, and wisdom to guide us through these special times. This is especially true with our staff and our new CEO, Stacy Teschner. Normally, I'd pause here for applause for these folks. So to ensure that they feel your appreciation, I ask that you go down to the little chat box and you click on that and just send a quick thank you to staff. I know they'll appreciate it. And then there's us, the members. We're here today not only just as ATSSA members, but as volunteers, freely giving our time to serve on ATSSA committees and councils as leaders in the roadway safety infrastructure industry with one unified purpose: to advance roadway safety. Your work is crucial to the success of ATSSA's mission. And we appreciate your tireless work and taking time out of your schedules, especially in this crazy time, to be here with us at Midyear Digital and working in our committees and councils throughout the year. As evident by this meeting, we continue on serving the needs of roadway safety. After all, we are roadway safety professionals. You see, every glass bead, inch of tape, pound of thermo, of every mile of pavement marking, every post, panel, and reflective sheet of a traffic sign, every nut, bolt, and steel panel of a guardrail, every pole, circuit, and bulb of a traffic signal, every cone, barrel, and attenuator in a work zone protects life. The life of a motorist, a cyclist, a pedestrian, or even one of our own, a worker. We don't know who they are. We don't know how many they are. We don't know the color of their skin. We don't know if they're women or men, whether they're a child or an adult, or even how they vote. But we do know one thing, and that is that each and every day we awake, we have the opportunity and the duty to protect each of their lives from the potential tragedies of our roadways. It's through us and our road safety infrastructure partners that we protect and improve the lives of so many. Our job ultimately isn't to invent, manufacture, sell, or even install safety devices. These are only the methods that we use to do our ultimate job, and that is ensuring that the fathers and mothers and the sons and the daughters of this world make it home to their families tonight and every night. After all, we are roadway safety professionals, right? In conclusion, we hope that you take advantage of this opportunity to network and join the various committee meetings through our digital platform. This concludes our opening session. Have a great day and enjoy this innovative 2020 Midyear Digital and your committee and council meetings. Thank you so much, and God bless.